minds tonight are packed with data.
Stuff.
Lots of insight. These two people are definitely worth listening to. Please give them a warm welcome, and I'm going to run out the back of the door. Be back in 2 minutes.
Oh, clapping us.
Yes.
So before we start, the TV is quite small, and so we pulled up one of the more small screens here. If you're having trouble reading this, you might want to move forwards. I know that's an unpopular thing to ask at these things, no one does. But now's your opportunity. Okay, right, you've been warned. Let's get to it. Over to you.
Okay. Well, I was actually going to start with the biogs. So Roy obviously introduced us, and I actually looked up today the death of David Bowie. And the reason is because the last time I did a talk at Agile Yorkshire, David Bowie died the day before, or not during the talk, but on the day of the talk. So 2016 was when I last talked at Agile Yorkshire. I can't remember what I talked about, but I do remember it finished with a quote from David Bowie. So he hasn't died today, so that's good. So yes, my current role is head of engineering at Jasper, working with Toby. Toby's my CTO. Toby kind of gave me a ring maybe a year ago saying, set up a team in Leeds, be fun, we'll get you an office. And I was like, yes, that sounds fun. So yes, that's why I'm here. My background is kind of IT, CTO, CEO, head of engineering, delivery. It's all those kind of fun things and kind of what I'm passionate about, I guess. I hope I have some of my current staff in the room, but it's about creating a space for teams to kind of make me look good. And hopefully, and I think it does resonate with some of the things that Georgina was talking about. Other things that you were talking about as well, when you said that, you worked in an IT system that was older than you, I was kind of reflecting it's getting less and less likely for me to be an issue. But also the asking 5 whys. So I want to add to our engineering induction, they have to ask Toby a question 5 times as part of their induction. See how that works out for everybody. So that's kind of me. Toby?
So hello everyone, so I'm Toby Sucharov. I've been doing IT now for about 20 years. So I spent a long time up in Leeds, working at William Hill and places like that. And then I founded my own company called Coruscant. We did iGaming products, kind of things to make casino games, kind of drag and drop things. And I sold this to Playtech with my partner. And I spent about 6 years in Playtech. So I've been a long time in the iGaming space. I moved from Leeds down to London, to Shoreditch, where all the fintech is. And then in recent years, working at Jasper, I've been the CTO now at Jasper for about 3 years. And we just opened some offices up in Leeds again, kind of coming home to the region. And this is partly about David. So I called David and said, do you want to open some offices here? We're looking to expand. And that's how come we're back up here now. So we're on the floor above. That's me.
Cool.
So, yeah, I'm going to tell you a little about Jasper. And the reason is because it's kind of important for the story about observability. Because this is really a story about the sector itself, okay? And how to do how to work in the fintech space. So Jasper blends together payments and identity, and we use open banking to do this. And we do payments across Europe. And if you're something like an online shop, maybe a shoe shop or something like that, and you want to take payments from customers, you could use the Jasper technology to do that. And as I said, it's all the way across Europe. So over the last few years, we've expanded and we're doing about 1 billion in payments a year now. So the company was founded in about 2017. There was kind of a period in the wilderness trying to find their feet. And in 2022, it pivoted to open banking. And at this point, we really got into the payments market. And from then, everything just shot up. Last year, we got some Series A funding for about $12 million. And this is all about expanding into America and doing payments over there. And what we did is we opened some offices up in Leeds, got David kicking stuff off. And at the moment, David and the developers here are working on the US payments product that's going to be launched in Q2 2026.
That's yesterday.
That's yesterday. Yeah.
We didn't go live yesterday, but I think Q2 plus a week or 3. So, Toby, we've mentioned £1 billion, or billion, sorry, it's €1 billion. I will say pounds, but it is euros. So in 2022, you're taking about €1 million in payments. In 2026, you're taking $1 billion. So there's quite a big difference in those numbers. And I kind of think it's interesting if you think about how you scale, or what is the difference between those two numbers. And so one way to think about that is in terms of the risk. So for the sake of this slide and this discussion, think about, what is the impact of losing a day's payments? So when it's $1 million, that's 2,800, give or take. And when it's $1 billion, it's 2.83 million euros. So as he's kind of assessing risk, obviously there's a lot more risk now than there was back then. And again, I think it's interesting to work out how do we get from then to now? What are the things that you should put in place? So this could be all about process. You could just say, okay, well, when you're a startup, you have kind of agile processes, and then when you're this size, let's have properly good processes. And I don't think that's necessarily the right solution to solve this problem. So I think what Toby did, or what the team did, was they looked at the observability. So this is a thing we want to kind of, if we get it right in 2022, maybe a way to look at it is it gives you the best chance of getting to 2026 by putting in place the right foundations. Then they then help you get to that place. So yeah, scaling is about understanding and managing risk, but it's not always something you can just say, well, let's just work it out at the end. Let's do that good work up front, and maybe that gives you the best chance to get to that end point. So looking at our system, I want to talk a little bit about the complexity that's involved. So currently, Jasper has about 100 or more merchants. About 2,000 European banks are currently supported. There's a large number of services involved in a payment chain across the UK and the EU. Payment rails, they're not the simplest of things, so they tend to be a series of asynchronous messages which may or may not kind of respond quickly. It's not a single, simple asynchronous call where it's just request response. And so if you look at an end-to-end of a payment, perhaps about 10% of a typical payment in our world is something that's kind of under our control. So a lot of this is outside of our control. And again, this is all about how do we kind of have confidence that we've got a system that works. So if we only started and we thought, well, let's start by testing for one bank. And I think Toby said today, this is actually literally what they did. So their first bank, they did functional testing for one bank. So you have one bank and you put money in and you get money out, I imagine, and you can test quite a few different scenarios, and then maybe you go to your second bank. 2,000 banks in Europe, we've got no chance of creating test accounts to do that, or even being able to do it. Similar problem now that we're moving into America. Turns out it's quite hard to get an American bank account as someone in England. So yes, we have to rely on certain people to do that, or send people to go and work in America. Maybe that's a strategy to solve that problem. And again, I just want to stay a little bit on the size of the problem. So thousands of banks, hundreds of merchants, probably hundreds of thousands of combinations of banks and merchants in a banking flow that we're currently doing in the EU. Complexity of some of these. So if you think of all this system end to end, you might have some banks that are down or banks that don't support certain countries. Payments can fail in lots of predictable ways and lots of non-predictable ways. And the reality of 2,000 banks is that of those 2,000 banks, probably a small percentage of them are just down at any given time for an hour, 5 minutes a day. And we kind of touched on this idea from the sparsity. So the universe is so big, we can't really permutate out all of these things. So we don't try and create lots and lots of different bank accounts. And also, out of these 2,000 banks, probably we have some which are responsible for a high percentage of these transactions. But also we'll have, maybe one bank in one country who's doing 10 transactions a month. And we probably don't really care about the outcomes of those.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Why do you have a lot more banks than we have merchants?
Why do you have more banks than merchants? So the merchants are who we're selling to. So we're a B2B. And so the merchants will typically be, or the sales pitch, or what the merchants want is, we want to support all of these banks. Now, the way you kind of start off is you start in the UK and you...
Banks, their customers' banks, so is that...
Yes,
Exactly. So it's like HSBC and yeah.
So you want to take a payment from the customer for the merchant?
Yes. So the basic flow works in the UK, as simple as merchant sends a link to the customer clicks on a link, they would then say, okay, open this in your banking app. So I might choose Monzo. I then push that payment from my Monzo app, and that then arrives in the merchant's, our bank account that the merchant can see. But obviously, there's some work to do to support all the ones in the UK. But we also use, I don't think we explicitly mentioned it on this talk, but we do have banking as a service providers who will, so we're not going in and doing a explicit point-to-point integration with a bank in Austria, for want of a country. Although, interestingly, that might be something you might want to consider in the future with tools such as AI. But we'll do that next year as a talk if we...
Are you effectively a global player or a world player? Are you different?
We are slightly different from WorldPay. So WorldPay is a payment service provider. So, yeah, exactly. So they will integrate someone like us, and we will be an open banking provider. But yeah, slightly different. We just do open banking payments.
I think, the final point of this is that basically what we're saying is that it's very much a probability game now. So it's, there's a big number of possibles. How do we do the appropriate amount of testing to kind of de-risk ourselves? And so the solution is around observability. So I'll talk a little bit about observability. Observability, like most things in IT, probably overloaded as a term. So observability, I guess maybe it's the log files that you have in your cloud. And dashboards are a view on this information. The sorts of things that would be useful to know about would be, how many payments, how many merchants, how many banks. If we have an outage, how many banks are affected. Root cause, if you've got dashboards that will tell us, of your 2,000 banks, 100 or the ones in Germany all stop working at this point in the flow. Again, it gives us a good tool to start to diagnose, okay, well, that's probably where we can start to diagnose this problem. And also the impact as well. By having dashboards that give you an indication as to what is the impact of this, okay, it's all the banks in Germany, probably Toby cares about that, or probably Toby's boss cares about that. So we should probably give that, due attention. Once we can see this information from a dashboard, then we can act. And there may be certain things that we can change. And there might be certain things where we just tell people, we tell the merchants, we get ahead of the merchants. It's not the merchant telling us. I think it's always a slightly difficult conversation when your customers are telling you that you're down. So it's nice to be ahead of that. And again, the observability or the dashboards is about allowing you to mitigate things that you can see. When you don't have that full picture, you are a little bit stuck. I think one of the clever things that I think was done quite early was the use of these dashboards. So as an engineer, I kind of want to know exactly what is going on in a system. I want to know what it's done recently, what's the current state. In my experience, product teams are often asking for features that they can sell and the value proposition. How does this help me do X, Y, and Z? So by doing dashboards that served a business need, even though the business maybe wasn't asking for them at that point in time, by doing dashboards that would allow you to look at daily sales volume per merchant, per bank, conversion rates, but we're also good enough for engineers to kind of intuit about the state of a system. You're kind of doing two things for two different stakeholders, but really important to the engineering team as well. So one dashboard, two audiences. That might mean, I guess you've got one set of data underlying it and you might have different views for different stakeholders, but it's the same kind of thing. So I think I'm going to take a pause and hand over to Toby. I'm going to let my throat recover.
Yeah, so we talked in the abstract a bit. I'm going to take you through a few concrete examples of what we're talking about now. So this is probably when you think about observability, this is probably what you think about. This is some AWS dashboards, and it's telling you about CPU utilization of a few nodes, et cetera, et cetera. This is technical observability. And obviously, it's critically important you have this, but it's more of a hygiene point here. You know, you're looking for nodes running out of memory. You know, if they run out of memory, really, really bad. But otherwise, you know, they're at 7% here. Is this bad? Is this good? You know, probably doesn't matter from a business point of view. So what we're going to talk about is business observability, and I'm going to introduce you to Mixpanel. Has any of you ever heard of Mixpanel? Brilliant. Okay, right. So I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to tell you how we misuse it. So to start with, this is not sponsored by Mixpanel. Other technologies are available, although there has been one pair free socks being given in the past from Mixpanel. So, you know, we have received some benefits in kind here. But what it is it's a product analytics platform that helps companies track and analyze how users interact with their websites or apps. It's widely used by products, growth, marketing teams. You're kind of thinking around, you know, Google Analytics, this kind of thing. We overuse this a lot, and I will explain exactly what I mean by this in a minute. So in Jasper, it's not just product, growth, marketing teams who use this. It's a product, marketing teams, and the developers, the testers, the integration teams, compliance, finance, the CEO, the account managers, sales, investors. Everyone uses this. As I said, even the investors are looking at this. So I'm going to explain a little about how it works. So it's a event-based system. So our front end, the browsers, when people are making payments, and the server send events to the system. This is an example. This is a payment outcome viewed. This means the customer has seen a payment, they've seen it complete, and what there is metadata around this. So it tells us some good things. It tells us who the merchant is, useful information, how much money has been paid. It also tells us things like which bank was used. It tells us the person's on an iPhone. So there's a whole load of metadata here, okay? The other thing, well, the common use of Mixpanel for product teams, for kind of UX teams, is they do stuff like this. They want to analyze their front ends. They want to say, right, people have come into this flow here. A journey has started, and then they see a continue and preview transaction screen. They click a button, the transaction gets completed, they get redirected to their bank, blah, 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 blah. Eventually, they do the pay-in. This is obviously super good for optimizing flows and realizing where people are dropping off, because you can see people are going down different routes and there's some drop-offs at various times. You can look into all this kind of stuff. And this is the traditional use of Mixpanel. It's super, super fast for analyzing systems and drilling down into them. It's really not a graphing tool. It is an analysis tool. But what we do is we turn it into business observability. And one way we do this is we go, well, we care about revenue. We care about conversion. We've mentioned that, but we care about revenue too. So if we see a payment and we know it's for £1, we're going to get an event that means the payment's complete. You can put lookup tables in this, and you can say, for this merchant, there's a revenue percentage of 2.5%. Maybe that's what we take in commissions. And we can put equations into this to calculate this. So we turn the system into something that's actually going to give us a real-time view of revenue. And that is probably to within a minute. So you can see within a minute of the whole thing what the revenue of the company is. And you can obviously drill down into this. So this is merchant revenue. These are some of our top performers. I've stripped off some of the numbers and they're anonymized here. But these are kind of, you know, revenue patterns over the month. And as you can see, there is a periodicity to these, which is monthly. And you can guess why this is. You know, people get paid monthly. That's when payments for a lot of our merchants happen after people get paid at the end of the month. And this kind of thing is starting to understand how your business is actually operating, what the merchants are doing, because this might only be a certain type of merchant, you know, that's taking payments at the end of the month. Other merchants might be doing other things. And it's this understanding of the system that's really critically important for us, because in this financial space, with all this layers of freedom, hundreds of merchants, thousands of banks, it's this that really helps us actually understand what's going on. This was our release in Austria. So we integrated the banks. We said to the merchants, you can turn them on now, and you can see uptake from the various merchants here. You can also see this merchant tried it for a while, dropped off. It's probably a story there. And we've got account managers looking at this, and so they're looking at these dashboards as well to try and understand what's going on. So as I said, it is much more than the developers looking at this. This is Belgium. So in Belgium, we've got a whole load of business banks. Now, it can be quite difficult to know how these banks are going to respond when you put payments through them. So these are seeing settlement times for the various banks. You can see some are settling within a second, and some are taking 10 hours to settle. Now, this has enormous business effect. If you've got a merchant who is iGaming or something like that, and they want to take people are depositing to bet on the England game, saying your deposit's going to go in 10 hours' time, that's when it's actually going to land in the merchant's account. That's an issue. So understanding all of these things, our understanding of a lot of these markets happen by literally turning the system on and seeing how it does actually behave. As I said, we don't actually have accounts to test all of these things. So there's a hefty degree of, normally in IT, you try and understand what you're doing, you build something, you test it, you put it live. There's an enormous part of this where the understanding of these dashboards actually goes round and drives the whole thing again. And we do actually update the configuration of these quite a lot based on this, because we can tune the banks. There's a lot of configuration that goes into these and how they work, payment rails, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, this is the kind of thing our merchants care about. We say to them, if you want to do payments in Austria, Belgium, 86% of them are going to be pretty much instant. There's a remainder of these that are not instant and will take a while to settle. Payments conversion. This is the other thing. When you speak to merchants, they say, what is a conversion of your system? And these are a whole bunch of random European banks I've chosen. And this is just showing you the kind of conversions we're getting from Mixpanel. So we've got some that are terrible. Kite's a bank up here, 0 conversion. That's terrible. Banco, 50%, pretty bad. You can see we've got a lot in the 90s around here. We've got one down here that's 100%. But this isn't really a very accurate picture of the world, because really what you're seeing is the statistics of small numbers. Probably this has only had one payment put through it. Probably this one's had one payment put through it. Maybe that one worked and that one didn't. And that is how you get 0 and 100%. It doesn't really tell you much about the system, because there is so many of these banks, you have a problem actually understanding what's going on.
Sorry, Toby, just a quick question. What's a bank conversion?
Bank conversion. Sorry, I should have defined the terminology for this. So this is, if someone starts a payment with that bank, do they complete it? So 100%, one person started a payment and then they completed it. And obviously, often reasons people don't complete payments is maybe there's an issue with the bank. Maybe they get sent through some flow where the system crashes, et cetera, et cetera. There can be many, many reasons why a bank doesn't accept a payment in the end. This is usage-weighted conversion losses. So this is saying if conversion is a crude tool, as we've seen in the previous slide, what we could do is we could have a target conversion for every bank. We could say this bank's got a 90% conversion, that's what we expect. We could get its actual conversion, maybe it's 88%, and then we can actually look at how much revenue we're putting through it, how much volume we're putting through it. And then we can come up with a number for how much money we're losing or gaining by hitting that conversion number. And this is telling us we've got Revolut International and Revolut at the top. These two banks at the moment are costing us the most money, or not making us as much money. Sparkassen's next, et cetera, down the list. What this does is it gives the development teams, the testers, somewhere to focus. What do I actually look at? because with this system, you're doing a lot of your analysis, a lot of your QA, a lot of your thinking after the fact, because you don't know how any of these are going to perform. And there is a bit of a controversial statement here, which is if a bank is failing, maybe you don't care if it's small enough. You know, if a bank is failing, but there's only been 10 transactions in the month, who cares? Whereas if Revolut is 1% less conversion than you hope, that's probably an enormous issue. So using this approach here, you really are looking through the data and choosing where to spend your time. It's a resource allocation problem. You know, you've got this enormous space. What are you going to spend your time optimizing?
So, given that, I think you mentioned that you're not, integrating directly with these banks.
Yeah.
Then when's an issue like this? I mean, what does resolution mean? Are we talking about you ringing up saying stuff's going wrong? Can you help us?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so we ring them up and we say stuff's going wrong, and they're like, oh, that sounds really bad for you. You know, if you can get some customers to phone us up and explain the issue, but that can be really hard for us because we might not actually have direct access to the customers to explain the issues. So what we need to do often is dig further through our data and understand it. So what did we do when Revolut was wrong? We tried to phone them up to start with, and then we did some, and that didn't get us very far. And then we did some more analysis. What you're seeing here is a graph of conversion with Apple apps compared to Android. Now, I think you can guess here where the problem arose. This is a conversion drop to 30%. And after we realized this, we went and did some Android testing ourselves. And yes, what had happened is Revolut have did a release here, and they broke the way they did URI encoding. And suddenly everyone was having difficulties paying. And we reported it to Revolut, and actually after a few days they fixed it. It's just because of the way they roll stuff out across Europe, it takes a while for everything to come back. So the banks often are quite engaged if you can tell them what's wrong. You know, when you say conversion is low, we don't know why, you know, that's an issue there. But if you can point them to something and say, it's Android, you did a release yesterday, and you know that's when our conversion dropped off. And at that point, you get much more engagement. AI. So Mixpanel has MCP, so you can get Claude to go and interact with Mixpanel. And this is just another merchant, another problem we have. What you're seeing here, and this is some Claude analysis of it, is these are people who've done one payment, and this is conversion. These are people who've done 2 or 3 payments. These are people who've done 4 to 10, and this is 11 plus. So what you'd expect intuitively is the more payments an individual has done, the better the conversion is going to be. They know what they're doing. You know, by the time they're doing their 10th payment, their conversion is going to be quite good. But these people, terrible. This is like 20% conversion. And what we found out when we saw this is the merchant was actually passing us the wrong customers. So from a country that it wasn't turned on for the merchant, and once we understood the problem, at this point here, we said, wait a minute, you know, wrong customers, get rid of those, just pass in the ones in the countries you've been turned on for. And obviously, conversion spiked up at this point. And the point I'm trying to raise here is you get quite multifaceted issues, and a lot of them end up being our problem. You know, as far as the merchant was concerned, when we were down here, we had poor conversion. You know, your service, it's not as good as other people's, but you need to understand the problems. And this business observability is the way we've been going around solving the problem. David.
Well, before we move on, do other people that do similar things to you find the same problems?
So, there's obviously quite a lot of partners we work with, and we do actually know what their processes are. And a lot of it is much more formal. You know, they've got logs, they've got developers who can look at the logs. You know, their business is a silo to make some of this data analysis actually really, really difficult to do. We've come up with a system here that allows pretty much anyone to look at this, because the other thing about this is all of the sensitive data is obviously stripped out of this. You're just looking at aggregates through this, which does mean we can actually let the account management team and other people actually look at this. So because there's much better access to data here, there is often other people who can come in and solve the problem for us, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes we'll see conversion dip on a merchant, and it will be the account manager who says, oh, actually, I know that, they changed something yesterday, just to let you know. Whereas with a lot of the other companies, it's an internal communication thing and a systems communication thing. This is a really good process for everyone actually understanding what is going on and giving them the tools to do that.
I mean, I was just going to, my observation would be, this is great. I mean, my thinking would be, obviously the banking system is becoming more diverse and more distributed, and we've got open banking, and there's ever more, explosion in permutations of how all these things can be wired together.
Yeah.
I would imagine your platform is potentially becoming more the most valuable part of, this observability tool becoming almost, or could be the most valuable part of the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive, for the ability to actually look at data, it is really impressive. But what we haven't talked about is the open banking standard also has something that allows you, with the customer to consent, to actually get hold of their bank data. So I talked about identity and payments at the start of this. I haven't talked about identity too. This is one of the key USPs of what Jasper is doing at the moment, is offering services like affordability checks. So a customer wants to get a loan for something, and using open banking, you can actually assess them because you can look through their bank details, etc. So yeah, we're kind of taking this kind of idea of observability in another way too, which is actually as a product. So that's probably the way we're going to market this a lot more.
I think Roy, it does come back to one of these, I guess, as an audience, we're kind of biased towards this, but the idea that, with AI going to take away some areas of things, it's agile processes that are going to be the enabler, is that, it's the things that you've put in place that allow you to really maximize the benefits of AI. So I didn't want to use up all the time, but I think we've got maybe 5 minutes. I think we can try and bring this back to Leeds or America, back to me. So basically, we launched yesterday, or the next couple of weeks we're going to launch. So does anyone kind of payments? Anyone who's done payments? European, American payments? So there's a kind of a moment when you kind of look at American payments, when you kind of go WTF, and the use case for American payments is that you grant permission, so we authenticate, and then you say yes, and you can do a transaction. But also you can now do a second transaction or a third transaction or a fourth transaction. So once we have authorization from someone in the American system, we can make multiple transactions. And in the UK or the EU, it's much more every transaction you have authorized. So there is putting your PIN number in or doing that every transaction is authorized. So the mitigation in the American system is that they can have returns. So the way that works is that basically the money is requested, there's a batch job that runs, the money gets transferred from the person's bank account into our bank account. And then the bank says, oh, actually, 2 transactions came out at the same time, so there wasn't enough money for that, so I'm going to take that money back. So now the American system, they can take the money back out of your account and say, no, that's a return. So that's slightly insane. And again, we have to manage this. So basically, what the offering in America is about guaranteeing the payment. So we're saying, yep, we'll take a payment, and if it doesn't go through, then we'll underwrite it, or we will make you good on that money that's been lost because the person didn't have enough money in their balance to make that payment. So there's like a 2-day window when money can get kind of returned. So again, this transaction is getting a bit more complicated now. And actually, there's a 60-day window. So up to 60 days later, the American citizen can look at their bank balance and go, what is that payment? Don't accept that. I'll have it back. And basically, that money would get returned to them. And in fact, Toby has a funny story about that, which maybe he'll tell you about at the end. So given this, it's actually a very hard thing to test as well, because we've already said it's hard to get American bank accounts to test with, but we really can't test this kind of clawback kind of functionality. Because I think we're breaking the terms and conditions of having a bank account in America if we're going to try and do transactions that are deliberately going to fail. So again, the strategy has to be about having a system that we can observe and we can intuit about. So we've never seen this in production yet. We will see this in production. We know percentages are probably going to be, maybe is it 1% of transactions will maybe go through this flow? And at which point we will then try and make another transaction to claim that money again. And the cycle continues. So again, these will be difficult things to kind of say definitively we've got right. And the other thing we found is that it turns out sandboxes for banking systems don't necessarily behave as the production system does. So again, that's always fun. And don't even start me about the documentation. Is that, we've coded to the documentation so it should work, and it didn't. So again, it's the observability that will, when we do go live in the second quarter, this will be the thing. I expect to see things failing, and then we'll work it out. What did I put at the bottom? Wow, that must be AI's words as well. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that we are going to have to watch what happens. That's going to be our reality. Let's see what happens, and let's deal with it there. And hopefully with Toby's dashboards, that'll be a lot easier. And it comes down to this point here, is that by having the right discipline in place, I think we have the best chance of living in a universe where we get more right than we get wrong. And the dashboards have been, they're a big part of that. That's this observability. There's a slide here, placeholder fraud scenarios. Fraud is really interesting, but not something we've kind of done as part of this talk. So if anyone is interested about how you deal with fraud, again, I think Toby's very opinionated, or we can come back and talk about that another day. Catch your breath. Any questions? Oh.